Man, we got a good one here. If you're a fan of the great outdoors or legendary rapper Snoop Dogg, you may have heard of the company Solo Stove. Solo Stove bills itself as having reinvented fire by creating a smokeless fire pit. In 2021, after several years of continual growth, the company went public and IPO'd at a value of $2 billion. That's billion with a B. One of its founders, Spencer Jan. Spencer's a serial entrepreneur, e-commerce marketing guru, and all-around good guy. We talked to Spencer for an hour, but easily could have gone for another one. Spencer lives with his wife in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and has 2 teenage kids. He served his mission in Kaohsiung, Taiwan from 1999 to 2001. In this episode, my good buddy and former MTC companion Jake joined Spencer and me to talk about the pursuit of financial freedom, Spencer being in business with his brother and the parallels of working in a mission companionship, the ineffable quality of grit, and maybe do a little bit of public math along the way. You'll see what I mean. Coming up next.
And it takes time and energy and effort. And then when you're getting old, like my parents, all they talk about is their next visit to their doctor and like the medicines they're on. I
Isn't
don't know
it
if your
sad?
parents do that, but that's what it was like. Stop talking about what medications and like your blood work and your tests of this. And it's just
Yeah,
constant, like,
it's
them going
it's
to the
such a
doctor.
sad.
And I was just thinking, I was like, it's so true. Like when you're, the different phases in life are so real. And, when I look at some of the younger kids that are in starting up their business or want to talk and say, hey, how do I do this? I'm just, dude, the amount of energy you have is unreal. Like I'd kill to
Yeah,
have that fire in your belly again, but I was there once. I don't think maybe it comes back, but yeah, it's nice to be able to relax and focus on your body and have that kind
yeah,
of be the new P&L that you're looking at every day. Being like, what are the
right.
inputs? What are the outputs? How does it
Yeah.
look? How healthy does it feel? And anyways,
So Spencer, give about, I don't know, a 60-second rundown, if that's possible, of your business background and solo and how you, I mean, I know that's a long story. People can go listen to the How I Built This for the hour-long breakdown of it, but
yeah.
in a nutshell, give us your background.
Yeah, in a nutshell, so it did served a mission in Taiwan, in Kaohsiung. So that was a Mandarin speaking mission, which was helpful because after I finished BYU, I took a job that sent me out to China, and I did a sales and marketing job out there, and then switched to a different company eventually, which was a sourcing company. And so I was in Shanghai for about 9 years, sourcing products for companies looking for contract manufacturing. 2008 financial crisis hit, and I was thinking, man, I gotta figure something out for myself because there's, the outlook is bleak, and I'm not making a whole lot of money, and I just need something on the side. And so I started dabbling with all things online, and one thing led to another, and I started doing e-commerce. I started selling products online, and really saw that take off. And that was in the early days of e-commerce. 2009, there wasn't Shopify around. We didn't have a lot of mobile people buying on mobile. Like there was no mobile shopping at the time. And so everything was very new, and I was at the front of that wave. And luckily enough, I found success in e-commerce. And one of the e-commerce brands that me and my brother started was Solo Stove. And we started out with a little camping stove, a little wood burning backpacking stove, which turned into some bigger camp stoves, and then eventually turned into backyard fire pits. And the product line has grown since then. We grew that brand and that company from the garage, bootstrapped it with $15,000, and we never put another penny in it, and just grew it organically for years. And it took us about 9 years. In 2019, we grew it to a point where we were able to sell a majority stake to private equity for a 9-figure valuation, and we're able to exit a good chunk of our equity at that point. Moved to the board, saw it go on for another year under the management we put in place. We sold to another private equity group a year after our first exit, and so we took more chips off the table. at a much higher valuation that reached into the mid nine figures at that point. And so we took more chips off the table, and we still continue to have equity in the company. The company's since gone public, so bought a couple other brands and was able to join them in New York a couple years ago and do the whole New York Stock Exchange and see the company go public. So it's been a wild ride. We went from the garage to the New York Stock Exchange in a matter of, I think, 10, 11 years. And well, let me think. Yeah, about 12 years, I guess that would be. And it was a great ride for e-commerce. And now you can find Solo Stove products in major retailers, including Dick's Sporting Goods and REI and Shields and some of these other big retailers. But yeah, the company lives on, and we kind of watch it from the sidelines at this point and just cheer them on and hope they do continue to do well.
I was gonna ask, is it weird not being a part of it and seeing things? I mean, I was at Costco the other day and I was like, "Oh, Solo Stove." And even me, I've known you a very short time, but I'm like, "Oh, Spencer, like this is so
Yeah.
cool." Or seeing the Snoop Dogg thing, and that's something that you poured your heart and soul into the brand and done all that stuff, and then all of a sudden, they kind of just take off and go without you. Is that a weird feeling or just a relief, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter. I never felt it was my baby. I never felt like it was my identity. I just never had that aspiration to have that business or that company or that brand be a part of me. In fact, we were very intentional at the beginning when we set it up that we didn't want to be the face of this company. At the very early days, nobody knew who really owned Solo Stove. And we just kind of hid behind. We didn't do any PR events. We never were very outspoken or did interviews. We just ran it kind of incognito and kind of flew under the radar and let it just have its own identity. I don't know why that was the case. I think it was more so that we were looking for something. This was a tool, right? This company and this brand was a tool for us to achieve an end goal. And we were laser focused on that end goal. And that end goal is really where I am now with all my time, freedom, and financial stability to say, now I can be who I want to be, which is
Yeah.
just me. Just, you know, good old Spencer, who, I spent last night playing video games with my daughter. And like that's me. Like I
Mhm.
got new headphones and everything. And I was like, yes, this is so fun.
Yeah.
Going on trips with them and hanging out and finding new restaurants. And like that to me is me. And this company, I never wanted people to say, "Oh, this is Solo, so this is Spencer. He's an entrepreneur." It's like, yeah, I guess I'm an entrepreneur. I don't mind saying that, but I just really wanted that time freedom, and so the focus was always on that. I can't wait to get there, and this is just what we have to get through to get there. And so, getting to the point of exiting and selling it, it was almost like you said, a relief that this is working. What we set out to do is working, and now we can hand it off. Now we can get out of it. Now we can have our lives the way we want it, and we've made the sacrifices and made the right choices to kind of get to where we want to get to, and that's really the exciting part is being able to achieve that. So letting quote unquote letting it go or watching it from a silence. Sure, I think if anything, right now it's just a financial. There's financial incentive for me to want to see it do well, and so from that
Mhm.
perspective, I'll obviously have an opinion. I'll say like, oh, they should have done this, or I like what they're doing here, or I don't like what they're doing there. But it's not so much in the spirit of, they're wrecking my baby or whatever. It's more so like, oh,
Mhm.
I still want a return on my investment here. I still have a little bit of skin in the game on this one. And so, but that's very superficial, right? And so I don't think about it a lot. I see it around and I go, oh, that's cool. I saw it in the BYU bookstore because they started like doing BYU etchings on it and stuff. And I just stood beside it and took a little picture with my finger on it. And I said, oh, that's cool. You see it, I'll see it around and I'll talk to people and they'll I always expect people don't really it's like, it's relatively a small brand, but more and more people I talk to ask me, "Oh, what did I do?" And I tell them, they say, "I know that." And I'm always surprised. I'm like, "Oh, you do?"
Yeah.
So it's really cool. But yeah, no, it's fun to watch from side. There's no stress, which is what I like.
So, Spencer, how old were you when you were working in China slinging the mattresses?
I think I went to China when I was 25. Yeah. I went there 2005. Yeah, 2005, and I was born in '79. So what's that? 24, 25, somewhere around there.
26,
Is that
26,
right? Yeah, I don't do
26.
public math. Is
Hey,
such
you
things
could have been. You could have been.
should
You
be
could have been
banned.
turning. You could have been
Like
turning
I should wear a
26.
shirt. I should wear a pin. Remember, let's not do public math. um,
You have to
Hey,
write
we'll,
up on the board in front of
we'll edit
everyone.
this out of the podcast.
yeah, no, yeah. I think I was about that age, and then I started working. But then when I started slinging mattresses, that was 2008, 9,
Okay.
2008, 9, I think around there. So what was I,
28,
30?
29, 30. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was 30 by the time, like, it took me that long. I wouldn't say took me that long. That's when it flipped and when I was like, I'm gonna try something. And up until then, I was content working a job. I mean, I always had a thought in my head of like, I want to try stuff, I want to do stuff, but never full blown like, I'm really going for it and it's not happening. It was just, let me work, let me get my, get some money in the bank, stabilize my
Mhm.
family, make sure I have food on the table. And then as it was convenient and opportunistic, then I started kind of hustling on the side and finding side hustles to do. And so, yeah, I was about 30 before I even started, which sounds old. I mean, I see so many young kids coming out of college and they're like, ready to go for it right away. I'm like, dang, I don't know if I guess that's the funny part about entrepreneurship. There's no roadmap that's like, follow this and you're going to get there. Everybody goes about it a
Mm.
different way. And there's so many different paths to the same place. So
Yeah.
kind of choose your own adventure. But yeah.
Well, it does feel stressful, if you're in a position like me and Jake where we'd like to do something. We'd like to, find success, but it's like you see people our age or younger who are doing great things and you're like, man, like
Mm,
they figured it out and I'm a failure. That's what it feels
yeah.
like. And it's nice to remember that like there's a runway there. And like you said, time to learn and there's also time to do things. And I mean, hopefully it works out and sometimes it doesn't for everybody, but hopefully, you know, if you keep it on your mind and keep it as a continual focus, it works out at some point to some degree.
Yeah, I remember watching this. Have you ever seen Casey Neistat on YouTube?
Oh yeah,
Mm-mm.
yeah.
Yeah, Jake's seen
I
him.
know who you're talking.
So yeah, so Casey Neistat's just this vlogger, real creative
Sunglasses.
guy. Yeah, wears his weird sunglasses. And I remember he had a video and it was talking about success and how everybody can achieve success. And it was really funny because the gist of it is as long as you don't stop trying, you'll get there eventually, sometime. Who knows when? Or you'll die trying. And at that point, it doesn't matter anymore. And so it was like,
Yeah.
as long, I mean, his whole video could have been summed up and just don't give up. But it's the
Mhm.
honest truth, right? Is if you just never stop trying, you will get there, and you have to believe that. And then the end of it is, and if you end up dying before you get there, well, then who cares at that point, right? It's like you're gone.
Mhm.
So, and he gave this analogy of the guy who used to play in this like 80s hardcore metal band called Anvil, and how this guy was so old, and then he would take these side jobs like delivering food or something through the city, and then at night he'd play these like just playing these dives, and he'd just still rock out even though he's super old. And then it was just so weird that this guy just would never give up because he's like old now and still rocking out.
Mhm.
And then eventually Netflix did like some like video on him, did a show on him because it was so weird that this old guy is still hanging on to this dream. And and that really blew up. And then suddenly that created the fame that he was looking for. And then it
Wow.
catapulted him into this like, now he finally made it. And it was like, as long as you just never give up, you have a chance to get there. It was really cool.
Yeah.
I always remember that.
A roundabout
That
way
is
to it,
that is
but it
cool.
works out, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to not to jump into the gospel too fast, the spiritual side of things, but that's how I've come to, really understand the church and the gospel is like all you have to do is keep trying. The second that you write it off and say, "You know what? I can't do it. I'm going to stop trying." That's when you fail. You're not perfect, but you just keep trying. And the same thing applies, right? Like you just keep trying until the end and then that's it. That's it. And I think trying is success.
There.
Um, relationships marriages, it all applies all across the board.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we just had that lesson, I mean, just in the Come Follow Me section that we're in now, the last class that we had with the kids that me and Will teach, talking about Lehi's dream and all the components to it and holding on to the iron rod and then also talking about falling off and like finding yourself in those different places in Lehi's dream, whether it's the mist of darkness or the great and spacious building. We'll all end up in these different places, but the whole key is to keep trying, kind of keep pressing forward. And it does translate to entrepreneurship. It does translate to life. And like Jake said, every part of your life, including marriage and stuff. But for sure for entrepreneurship, you just don't know what the what stepping stone you're on, right? And it feels like what you're doing might not be right, or you don't know where to start, and that's not the point. The point is to start and keep trying and keep moving and putting one foot in front of the other, and they just lead to different things. And I've just seen it years and years, the same kind of theme coming up where it's just keep moving forward and stay in the game, and things kind of work itself out, and you find every step is a learning step, and every failure is a learning experience. And that's the weird part about society is from a young age we're taught not to fail, like by grades. I mean, if I think about my kids
Yeah.
in school, they're graded. They just came, my son just I just picked him up yesterday, and he said, "Dad, the school rankings come out." They come out with rankings. So
Hmm.
they rank the kids and then they tell them what rank they are in
Yeah.
their grade, like with a number. And he was like, "Well, it's not that bad, I'm above average." And that's the thought, right? He literally said, "I'm above average." And that's so weird that I heard that. And thinking about it yesterday, it's been on my mind because I'm like, I need to talk to them and address that. Because it is not you're just above average because they gave you a number.
Yeah.
You're so far above that. Like your potential, your eternal potential is great. And let alone your earning potential or your potential in a career, whatever, is not defined by what Keller ISD is going to put on a report card for you. But that's what's ingrained in their head. And whether they do well on a test. If they do well, they get rewarded by an A, which feels good. And then they feel all of that. But then, if you don't, you get a bad grade and then the teacher looks down upon you or your classmates look down upon you. It's just a weird way to kind of define success. And if you leave it to the outside world to kind of do that, you end up in a weird place that not only is it bad for you in many ways, but from an entrepreneurial perspective, it keeps you from even believing in yourself and thinking like, well, I'm just average or I'm below
Yeah.
average. My whole schooling, I went through it and I'm just below average. So I'm just going to be a below average guy. The ironic part to entrepreneurship is you kind of have to be dumb enough to jump into it and not think anything and not care what people think about you and just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And then suddenly, you realize that everything that you're running into and obstacles that you're running into are teaching you a lesson that's making you better for the next challenge that's in front of you, at least from an entrepreneurial perspective. And then suddenly, years into it, you're a great entrepreneur, and then you come up with a great business that serves you and your family well, and suddenly everybody's looking at you, being like, "How did you do it?" And it's a weird way that
Yeah.
the outside world kind of guides us as to defining what's success and what's failure, and it's a tricky thing to get your head around.
What you're mentioning, like, is very apt to a quote. David Neeleman. He's
Mm.
the founder of JetBlue, and
Oh yeah, yeah,
I don't know, I think they say he's founded 3 or 4 airlines or something by now. But he there's an interview and they talk about trying to find it. Says he's had ADHD in school and he struggled. Then he went on his mission. He said, "My mission saved me. It was the first time in my life that I ever felt like I had some talent." Because he's going through school and he's going, "I have ADHD. I'm not really anything special." And going out on having that experience for him was like, "Whoa, like I am special. I can do special things. I'm good at certain things." And yeah, I think it's so sad that, you'd put a label on a kid from an early age that, hey, like you're above average or you're below average. And that's just who you are. And they start to ingrain that as their identity and shape the rest of their life. So pretty
yeah,
crazy that that still happens.
yeah. It's nice that the gospel balances it out, right? Because there's no grades.
Yeah.
at a church, right? We're not getting a report card every year, thank goodness. But I think the focus on our potential, as children of God is I think monumental in our lives in terms of shaping our how we're thinking about ourselves. And it takes going to Sunday, going to church every Sunday to kind of remind ourselves of that, and to remind ourselves of what we can achieve, to kind of battle against what maybe weird thoughts creep into our minds in terms of out, outside influences when we're just going about our daily lives. But yeah, it is a tricky thing. And yeah, think about missions in that respect. I think it could go both ways though, right? Is like some kids could really feel like they didn't
Mhm.
do great on their mission if they didn't hit the numbers. And I don't remember. I served a mission a long time ago. It's been what? So I'm 45 now. So that's what, like 25
Public
years
math
ago.
again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I almost said 15 years ago. I was like, wait a minute. but uh, but yeah,
Carry
no,
the
it's been
one.
a long time. Yeah, it's been a long time. And back then, there was a lot of focus, and I don't know if there is nowadays, but there was a lot of focus on numbers, right? Hitting your numbers and reporting daily to your district leader, setting goals, and did you hit them or not? And I'm sure there's still some element of that, but there is that thought, there is that balance, right? That contrary of having numbers to move you along and set goals to achieve, because you don't, it's hard to work towards something if you don't know what you're working towards. But at the same time, not holding those numbers above your head and saying like, "Oh, I'm a horrible missionary," or, I'm not doing really well. I think there's a balance there that I wish I mean, I think I figured it out when I was out there, and I kind of understood it was, for me, it was more the effort put forth, the output, than it was the outcome. Because there's so many things, you realize when you're a missionary, the work really isn't dependent on you as a missionary, and you're kind of there as a benefactor of this time that the Lord's able to work on you and teach you through different experiences. And hopefully, at least for me, that's what I felt like I came to realize quickly, and was like, oh, wait a minute, this the work will go on whether I'm here or not. And the world's not depending on me to, you know, solely to bring them the gospel. And that kind of relief kind of helped me then realize, well, then why am I out here, and what am I learning? And I think it was a matter of understanding that, and then recognizing that I get out what I put in. And as long as I was putting forth my best effort, I was learning, and those learnings carry forward for the rest of your life. At least it does for me.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I don't know if it's in the new Preach My Gospels that they came out, but in the old one, when we were serving, there's the sentence in chapter 1 that basically says, your success is, or the purpose and whatever, your success is defined by your willingness to find people to teach the gospel to. And that was nice because it's like, oh, the ball's in my court. And like you said, it's not so much you have to have baptized this many people or you have to have had this many lessons or anything. It's like, am I going to wake up each day and be committed to trying to do this? And that's all that matters. If your willingness is there, again, you've won. You're trying, you're winning, I
But
can't
that's a
imagine.
great thought, and it's a great. I think that's what a lot of us figured out early on, and that just translates to everything else. I mean, if we're gonna circle back to entrepreneurship and stuff, it's the same thing. It's like you just have to keep trying, you just have to keep going. And so many things out of your control, but the inputs you can control, that's what you have to kind of go, you know, full throttle on. And if you do
Mhm.
that, good things happen.
Actually, one of the things that I think is the coolest about his story is that he did it with his brother. So this is like a family thing. And if you look in history, there's like Orville and Wilbur Wright and, these other historical brothers that have come together and created an incredible product. Are you and your brother pretty tight? Like, can you describe your relationship?
Yeah, I mean, we grew up together. We're my younger brother's the youngest out of the family. There's four kids in our family. I'm the
Mhm.
third, and he's below me. So we grew up. I think that order too was interesting because at that point my parents were really busy, and they made all their mistakes with my oldest brother and probably my sister too. And by the time they got to us, they were probably exhausted and just said, figure it out, guys.
Mm,
Like,
do whatever.
yeah, just go. And so we spent a lot of time playing together. We were really close together. In age, we were the closest, and so we did grow up very close. And I think that led into things. We would, when we were both working day jobs, we'd call each other and we'd um, share our feelings as to where we were in our careers and how we were unsatisfied with things and what we truly wanted out of life. And those different stages as you go through school and then you graduate, then you get married, then you start having a career. And we were pretty lockstep in our growth and different stages in life. And so I think that was helpful. And it was good that the more we talked, having been raised by the same parents, pretty much had the same values and the same goals and the same things we wanted. And we articulated it to the point where like, yeah, like, let's do something about this. What can we do? And so working together was great. There was very little friction, if any. I mean, I can honestly say I don't think we ever had an argument because if
It's
one person
amazing.
was more passionate to get something done his way, it would just be like, "Okay, if this makes you happy, like, I want you to be happy in this. Like, this vehicle should be a vehicle for us to better our lives. It shouldn't be one that tears us apart. So if this is the
Yeah.
thing that makes you happy, then quote unquote, drive the car however you want. I'll just sit in the back
Mm.
and hang on and hope for the best." And I think that's how we went about it. And I always said in my mind, there's nothing in this business that's worth um, getting between me and my brother in terms of a relationship. It just isn't worth it. It's just a business and it'll go on. And like I said, there's many paths to success. So who's to say that his choice in any one matter is better or worse than mine and vice versa? And so you get to the point where, or we got to the point, I got to the point where I could trust him in his decisions because I've seen it enough to where nothing blew up, the wheels didn't come off the bus and good things happened for the most part. And so the more I did that, the more I trusted him, the more I built trust and confidence in his decision making. And I hope it went the other way because we kind of just let each other work on things and great sounding boards for each other. And so it was a great partnership. He's very much more methodical, thought through. I'm a little bit more of the gas pedal. He's a little bit more of the brake. And that helped um, keep us even keeled and having the ship just kind of have smooth sailing in pretty much all circumstances. So, yeah, we had a great relationship. It was a great ride. We spent a lot of time together. And yeah, I couldn't imagine having done it without him, to be honest. And I think he would say the same.
That's cool. That was gonna be my next question. Could this have happened without your brother? But you answered that, so
Yeah, you think about mission companions, and sometimes they're great, and sometimes they're a little bit more challenging. But the ones that work out great, boy, you really feel it, huh? You really feel that sense of partnership and camaraderie. And when I'm down, you lift me up, and vice versa.
Mhm.
And you bring different strengths to a team that is out there. And I think that translated well in business for us. And I felt like we figured that out pretty well. Maybe subconsciously the mission had a part of that, right? Teaching us how to work in partnerships. I know in Y Combinator, that accelerator program, that Silicon Valley's accelerator program, they don't
yeah.
accept any applicants who aren't partnerships. They
Mm.
require that there's two people in the business. And I think that's probably for good reason, right? They know and they've seen enough to where if you're if you're a solo um, one man on an island sort of feel. It's hard. It is hard to get through the tough times. It's hard to be in your own head, to not be able to have a sounding board and to listen to your ideas and somebody who wants to listen to your ideas, right? And be able to kind of hash through things. It's hard to not have somebody who has complementary skills that make up for your weaknesses. Sure, you can hire someone, but if anybody's ever had a company and hired, you know how hard it is to hire good people. And when
Mm.
you find them, it's hard to hold on to them. So having somebody who's invested in the business in a very big way and brings a lot to the table, I think is crucial in the setting of building a business.
Yeah. Well, I think you are touching on it, the subconscious aspect of having been on a mission and having had a companion, because that's probably the first time that any of us have. I mean, you have friends when you're a teenager, but you're not friends that are driven to like achieve some common purpose. You're just kind of chilling and playing video games or playing basketball or whatever. But when you get on a mission as a kid, you're still a kid, man. You're just 19, you're young. And okay, you got to work with this guy and you have something that you're directed to do. Yeah, that's a lot of failure experiences, a lot of just give and take and learning that process, which, you haven't done to that point in your life. Uh, so I think that's an interesting point.
Yeah, I wish they would have done like more, I don't know, like counseling or like prep to help missionaries be like, because you're in a relationship. And
Right.
like you said, it's the first time. It's like there should be some classes on that. Like, how do you resolve conflict? How do you
Yeah.
compromise? Right? How do you build each other up? How do you pray or what's it called? Like give positive reinforcement when instead of saying, "Hey, I don't like how you do that." That focusing on the negative. How do you do positive reinforcement? All these things that you have to learn in a relationship, whether it's that or more importantly in your marriage. These are things that if you think about a marriage, there's so much coaching and counselors, and I mean it's a whole field of study that you would think like on missions they would prep us before we went out to be like, look, this thing's going to be dynamic. And I think from a mission standpoint, they just kind of threw us into the lion's den, didn't they? It was like
Totally.
partner up and
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Don't
Marriage is
kill
the
each
same.
other.
Yeah, marriage is the same way, but at least I took a couple classes at BYU of like marriage prep, right? It was always so fun to
Yeah.
to start. You'd have a little bit of idea or a little prep going into it. And I think that, that would have helped for sure as we figured out those relationships in a mission. But for sure they translate, all of those learnings that you do learn obviously serve us well in future years with companionships and entrepreneurship, and having a business partner is definitely a close relationship amongst all the different ones that we have in our lives.
So Spencer, did you know that you always were going to go on a mission? Was that always in your plans?
I mean, I always knew the mission was kind of a lingering thing that's coming up. And I don't think well, I know I didn't commit in my mind to going on a mission early on, which I think was probably not the right way to go about it. But that's just by default. You know, the procrastination in me kind of, I think that's the path it took, where I was just like, I'll figure it out later. I'll decide then, which probably isn't the right move. I think an early
But it's
commitment.
common. I feel like it's
Yeah, I
what
think
most people do.
it's a big decision, and why make a big decision now if I don't have to? And
Plus, you're in high school and like you have other things that in your mind are just like they're top of mind. That's like you said, it's lingering. Like I am gonna have to do this kind of thing, but
yeah,
not now.
sure. And then you get there and you're like, oh, dang, am I really doing this thing? And I did a year. This is before they changed the age, obviously, to where you could serve right after high school. But so I did a year of BYU Hawaii before my mission. And it was that year of Hawaii where I really just wrestled with the idea of, do I go on this mission? And of course, as a young kid, and now I understand it, right? 2 years when you're 18, not quite 19, right? I don't know, like here, somebody do the public math, but 2 divided by 18, that's a big percentage of your life that you're
Yeah.
committing to. And you're like, holy smokes, I've only, you don't think of it that way, but you know, you've only lived, and you can only remember since you were 4. So, I mean, I guess
Right.
that makes it like 14
Right.
years of your life. You're like, I've only had 14 years. Now I got to give up 2 to go do this thing. It's a big time commitment. Now in hindsight, I'm like, 2 years, I could probably take a
Yeah.
nap for 2 years and not realize it.
Yeah.
But at that time it was a big chunk of my life, and I had a hard time coming to that decision for a myriad of reasons, but it just it just didn't in my mind. There was a lot of like fear of, I think there was a lot of FOMO is what it was, right? Just fear of missing out on what's going to happen in those 2 years. Of course, I'm
Yeah.
thinking like, I'm just going to be dumb by the time I come back, and I'm not going to be able to be as book smart as I am now. And I'm, I'm not, technology's going to move on. I was thinking about doing something in computer science, and I thought, man, I'm going to come back and know nothing. And yeah, I just didn't, it was hard to kind of figure that out. Luckily, my parents were just good on hanging back. I think they knew me well enough to where they didn't want to make a decision for me. And they're like, this is
Mm.
your decision. If you're going to go, you're going to make it on your own. And, I didn't have the best attitude when I was in Hawaii. I didn't love it that year I was there. I think there was a lot of, I wouldn't say it's homesickness, but just that change and that unfamiliar situation. I didn't take to it very well, and really got in a bad space in my head and had a bad attitude about everything. But I came home after that year of school, and just focused in on what I should do, and through a lot of prayer, like a lot of experiences go, you end up knowing what you should do, and then it's just a matter of, can you execute on it. And and I feel like I've been good my whole life on getting stuff done. Just like, once I know what needs to get done, I'm pretty good at just sucking it up and doing the work. And at that point, it was, doing the work to get prepared to go on a mission, and to, work through the things that I needed to clear up to be able to, be worthy to go serve on a mission. And I think obviously that was a hurdle, but making that decision was tough. It was really tough. I think about it with my kids too, because it was like, man, how can I help them be in a better spot to be able to make that decision? Um, but it is a tough one. I think some are, we all have different experiences with it. Some have an easier time, some have a harder time. But even that decision, whether it was easy or hard, the next step is getting out there, and then, can you find yourself on a mission, and can you be quote unquote successful, and being able to come out of a mission and learn the things that you need to learn. But no, the decision process wasn't easy, and it wasn't always crystal clear, but I'm so grateful I did. I mean, like you said, I think the name of your podcast is such a good name, and I try to instill that in some of the youth that we teach in the classes that we teach us at church. But for them to realize how valuable those 2 years are. I mean, there's just so many things you can draw upon. Um, and, to be able to put that in the bank, it's definitely, the greatest ROI you could ever get.
Yeah. Jake, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say one of the things that I think a lot about from my mission was this structure of having this morning study that happened every single day. And it was actually one of my most prized parts of my day because, it was some time to kind of reflect and learn some new things and then figure out how I was going to apply those things as the course of the day went on within the field. I was curious if you had a similar experience, and I know that in your arc to producing the solo stove, you went through mattresses and a few other products, and that required you to learn things like you'd never learned before. You kind of studied at a very aggressive pace. Was that something that you honed on your mission? I know you learned a language out there too. So
Yeah, I think obviously the mission is a great training ground to learn how to learn. And I'll be honest, I think w- in the on my mission, if you were to talk to my companions, I was the worst at morning study. I was the absolute worst. I wouldn't get out of bed. I had one companion who was hilarious because he was such a nice dude. And anyways, he would hop up on the top. We slept on bunk beds. I was on the top bunk, and I just pulled the covers over my head, and just I would not get out of bed. He would hop up on the other side, on the other bunk, and he would just start. Like, he'd be talking to the wall. And I was
oh
just
man.
like, I was like, just stop. And he's like, no, we're doing this. And he was a great example of just like discipline and study. One thing I realized though through it all is like, I'm just not a morning person. And you know how they would have like, I don't know if you guys remember like in the MTC, and I don't know if it's the same, but they would have like the exercise time And for us, it was in the morning. So we had the morning exercise. It was so early. I mean, this is like
Mhm.
5 in the morning, or I mean, my
Mhm.
memory of it is like it's 5 in the morning, and we would literally go to that gym, and some people would run, some people play basketball, and I would bring my pillow, and I would just go up to the top track and find a corner, and just I can't. I'm
That's
just like
great.
not a morning person. And what's funny though is um a lot of my best work and a lot of, thinking about entrepreneurship and building a business, a lot of my best work came in the evenings, like late into the evenings. I was always an evening person. And some of my best ideas and best thoughts and work and efficiency was done late at night. And I leaned into that because I realize that I can. It's a hard thing for me, but stuff needs to get done. And so I found that late nights for me really worked. And so I built a lot of the business in the wee hours of the mornings. As a side hustle, it's easier to work at night when your kids go down, when you kind of have that downtime, you can get a lot of work done at night. So, work has to get done, but at the same time, like, you know, be real with yourself. I felt like for me, a mission helped me figure that out n- because there were areas of that mission that I was just not able to do, which I think is fine. Kids that go on a mission, I feel like those that tried to conform, not, I wouldn't say conform, tried to be somebody who they weren't,
Yeah, for sure.
had a hard, hard time. And I saw a lot of those guys fall off the bus
For sure.
and end up going home because they just like they tried so hard to the breaking point and were just not satisfied with not living up to who they thought they should be, as opposed to just living up to their potential and who they are as a person. So a lot of those, I feel like that's how I navigated the mission was just being true and honest with myself. And if there were areas that I just weren't good at, that's okay. You're not going to be perfect at all of them, but shine where you can shine, and then try to get through the areas that you are weak in. But yeah, I feel like it taught me how to learn and taught me how to understand how I learn best as a person. And I kind of leaned into that and said, hey, I'm different than everyone else, and it's okay to do things differently. And I'll do my best to abide by the rules that were really really strict, or really really like there's no zero tolerance on this. It's like, okay, I'll do that. But I found myself figuring out how to learn how I learn.
Yeah. Well, it really is an intensely personal experience. It's funny because as part of that, you're with somebody all hours of the day and you're meeting people and you're talking to people all the time, but it really is, like you're saying, the time to come to learn yourself the most and learn how you learn. And you've alluded to this, but I think one of the best lessons that I took out of my mission was that I finally saw my own potential. And that was like, you're kind of in a laboratory state in the mission, is how I like to think of it, where, yeah, it's a real world, but it's kind of not, right? Like, there's kind of tasks and things, and you're sheltered from certain things. But within that laboratory, I was able to see who I had the potential to become. And that's different for everybody, but at least I knew it because I didn't know that before. I didn't know who I was or what I was good at or how I learned or how I worked best. I didn't know any of that. And so now, in real life, the challenge is replicating that and trying to live up to what you now know your potential is outside of the laboratory setting, which is a challenge that I don't know that I've completely figured out yet. But I'm so grateful for the mission because without that, I really feel like I would be flying blind and still trying to learn myself, even into my late 20s and whatever. I learned really fast in the 2-year span that this is who I am and this is what I'm capable of achieving. And now it's just about figuring that out outside the mission setting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're thinking about building a business, just being able to teach yourself to do hard things and how to navigate that, for sure. I mean, that's like a priceless lesson. And I think, if you're going to build a business, or if you're thinking about doing some sort of side hustle, man, you just, you know, th- those that have the grit to kind of figure it out and to push through hard things and to just keep going. I think that's, half the battle,
Yeah.
if not more. And that's what a mission kind of taught us, right?
And grit is one of those things that I've identified as a real secular benefit of missions, which, gosh, I just don't know w- where else that's you can learn that as much as you can on a mission because it's such an intangible, whatever Angela Duckworth has her TED talk on it, and it kind of people study it a lot. They talk about it a lot now, but it is totally gritty. I mean, everything that you do, whether it's like, are you gonna it's raining, like, are you gonna not go out in the rain because you don't wanna get wet or you don't wanna ride your bike in the rain or whatever? And to, like, summon yourself to push through, and you learn grit in a way that you know, I think once you know that, then like you say, you can apply it again to business because you go, "Look, I done it. I know what it is. I kind of have that intangible now."
Yeah, there's it's interesting when you think about a mission, some of the stuff some of the stuff we put ourselves through and the hardships of it. You talk about being out in the rain. Taiwan is a very humid tropical climate, and we're basically sweating for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Just sweating through every piece of clothing, and then you have a tie and you're buttoned up, and you just realize like how to just like accept the suck, and just
Yeah.
be like this is how it's gonna be, and I can either whine and focus on it, but it's not gonna change, and so, you just go about your day and you just sweat like crazy, and we'd take a couple showers throughout we eventually got to the point where, like, we're going home and taking a cold shower, and then we'll come back out and do the same thing, but you find
Yeah.
ways to kinda get through it. The key to all of that as I think about that as it relates to whether it's business or whatever, is you really have to have a strong motivation to get through all of that. Like there's got to be some underlying reason why you're willing to go through all of that. And if you can't find that or hone in on it or get it right in your mind, um, it's hard. It's hard to like you said, summon the grit to kind of push through it and slog through it. And business is the same way, is if somebody just says, I just want to make a lot of money, good luck. Because money's a horrible motivator.
Mhm. Yeah.
You think it's good until you get to those spots where it's really, really tough and you're stressed to the max and the level of worry and concern and the fear of the unknown or the fear of things going bad and sideways or struggling through things when they go bad and sideways. There's very few things that can get you through that. And so to be able to kind of identify that early and say, this is what I'm fighting for, and to hold on to that as your North Star is so important. And I think, a mission is easy and kind of teaches us because it gives us the ultimate motivation, right? We're striving to become like like Christ. We're trying to be, we're trying to work towards the purpose of our whole existence here on earth. I mean, there's very few motivating reasons that kind of trump that. But when you go into business, you start thinking about that and, it's hard to pull that out and be like, I'm going to build this business because I want to be like Christ. It's like,
Right.
it's probably not,
Mm,
it's
mm,
probably not necessary to do that. And so it doesn't really stick. And sort of trying to find, and that was one thing that we tried constantly is to remind ourselves, what we're fighting for. And when you did that, you just visualize that outcome and you'd visualize achieving that goal. And if it's pure enough and if it's strong enough, then it moves you forward and you can summon the amount of grit that's required to get you through those hard things. And yeah, mission first in terms of teaching us how to be focused on something bigger than ourselves and working towards it because you're doing it for reasons that are just so
Yeah.
so immensely important to you that's the focus, right? And
Yeah.
that's what you're focusing on. And so the other stuff is just, fighting your way through it to get there. And yeah, there are definitely, I mean, whether it's food or climate or, for me, it was, every time you stopped at a red light, we were on our bikes surrounded by scooters and we're just
Yeah.
sucking in the smog and the exhaust of all these scooters in like 30 plus degrees Celsius weather and
Yeah.
sweating. And we had to wear these goofy bike helmets and
Oh,
all the,
yeah.
the whole thing was just like,
Yes.
physically torturous, but to be able to find joy in that eventually is it's definitely a good case study of how that happens.
For sure. So I know we're coming up on time, so we won't take much longer, but a couple of other things.
Yeah.
I approached you after you gave the fireside speech a while ago and talked to you about this, and you're specifically, I mean, you're really kind of a marketing guru, and you talked about the analogy of funnels and stuff. That being one thing in particular that a mission kind of tie you, and I just like if you could expound upon that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Me and my brother, I remember sitting, we sit often and talking about, what's the next digital marketing strategy for our e-commerce business. And we couldn't help but always go back to the mission and be like, well, how did we do it on the mission? Because if you think about a mission, I mean, you're selling one of the hardest things ever, right? You're selling Jesus, you're selling like, the gospel, this foreign thing that, to us is so invaluable, but to somebody else, they've never heard of it. And so it's the hardest sale ever. Um, Maybe that's the name of your podcast, right? The best 2 years slash the hardest sale
Yeah,
ever.
right.
But that's what it was, it's a hard sale to make. And so how do you go about doing that? And we'd always just think, well, what were the strategies on the mission to be able to find someone to work them towards conversion and then eventually conversion. And then not just conversion, but true conversion. We're talking about after they're baptized. How do they integrate into the ward and how do they become part of that community? And thinking about that, overlays really, really clearly when you're thinking about marketing strategies in terms of top of the funnel, right? Prospecting and how do you get people into the funnel to be able to kind of, if you're thinking about it as a teaching pool, right? We're from a business perspective, we're talking about finding an audience, a group of people that we can target to then deliver a message to them. It just becomes this huge cycle of marketing that when you think about um, marketing strategies and you think about what you did on a mission, it truly is has cre- the church has created. I mean, created a very clear and easy to follow marketing strategy, and it's not something that's secretive or clever or kind of you're tricking someone. It's a true a path to conversion. And if it can work on somebody when it comes to something as hard as do you accept Christ and his atonement, and you know do you now know where you came from, why you're here, and where you're going? Like if you can sell that, if you can help them get to such a difficult concept, yet such an important concept, and if you follow those same steps, how how much easier it is to just sell them something, a physical product that at the end they actually want to buy. If you layer on those same steps and that same thought process, it's easy to come up with a lot of in-depth marketing funnels that lead you to, you know, a positive ROI from a business perspective. So yeah, we did a lot of that, and it's interesting how many layers you can peel back on that onion when it comes to marketing strategies that we learned on the mission. It's a lot of fun.
You have two teenage kids. Give one thing that you would advise them to prepare for going on a mission.
Really, the first thing in my mind came is like, prepare for hard work. That's one thing. But if I were to really say, I'd tell them prepare yourself and be ready to make it fun. I just feel like whether it's business or a mission, man, if you can just have fun, if you can just smile, if you can learn that skill and be able to have a good attitude about things, everything just becomes fun. And then the hard stuff kind of fades away. And then it's less about not saying it's not hard work and you don't have to, have grit to get through it, but it eases that side if you can just have a lot of fun and find fun in the gospel. It doesn't have to be stuck up and tight and rules and this and that. You can have a lot of fun. And I think if if our Heavenly Father or Christ is there, I think He'd want us to have fun. And that's what I would try to work on helping them understand is this mission can be a lot of fun if you make it fun.
Okay, Spencer. Well, we took you over time, but it's just fun to talk to you. And you're a very humble person. You're somebody that I've known a short time, but I really admire, and you're very down to earth. And so I really am glad for your time and everything you've shared with us.
Well,
Yeah,
thanks for
thank you
having
so
me on. I
much.
think it'll be fun to listen to the podcast and watch it grow and hear the different stories of those that you interview. Thanks for having me on.
Dude, he's a
Some
cool
good
guy.
stuff, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's such a likable guy. Like I just really gravitate to his personality.
No, for sure. Yeah, and he's like kind of like a no nonsense kind of guy. He's got some really good wisdom from his life experiences, which are many compared to your average 45-year-old.
He's
And
an
yeah,
executor, kind of like you
yeah,
said. You know, he once he has wrapped his mind around something, it's just like, okay, let's do it. What are we kicking around, sitting here waiting, not doing anything? You know, it's the kind of get it done mentality, which is great. I mean, it's great on a mission. It's great in life.
yeah,
Learn how to learn. He talked about that quite a lot, but to me, that was such a huge thing, and it's huge in life. I mean, I did get that benefit in college where I learned how I learn from a scholastic point of view, but learning how I learn people or so many other things, I think is a really important point on the mission. And the other thing that he touched on that is just so true that you do have FOMO as a kid, as a teenager, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna miss Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one when we left.
yeah,
And who cares? Like in the moment with foresight, you're like, oh my gosh, like there's just so much going on, and yeah, I'm gonna fall behind in school. And first of all, you're not. First of all, you're going to build yourself up more than anything else you could do from a spiritual perspective anyway, better than, you know, slumming around 2 years of college just trying to skirt by tests and things. But number two, yeah, you're not going to miss anything. It's all there. It's all there when you get back. And you do just have to take the leap of faith and do it and trust that you're going to be better for it.
yeah. No, I totally see that. And it's funny because now you pretty much at some point every day you think about your mission and something that happened on your mission. And I mean, missing that would have been the ultimate missing out experience. If you
For
think about
sure.
it,
That's
in
so
hindsight,
true.
as for myself, I had a few things that I wanted to ask him, and I did ask them going into the episode. And one that I mentioned was about his brother, his relationship with his brother, and how like it's just so cool to me that he's got this brother. They're on the same page. They're both kind of like know what they want out of life, right? They have mission experiences and they have things they know they're good at, and they managed to pull this incredible thing off. And so I think we don't always have, the obvious person in our lives that's like for him it was his brother who's just gonna it just clicks, right? And he mentioned that. He said it just worked out and he doesn't even know whether he would have been able to pull it off without having his brother on board, you know, and how they were in lockstep with each other from each phase of life, up to their exit, right? And beyond. And so yeah, I don't know. I think that's really inspiring and I it's hard to find people that see eye to eye to you that have the same grit, right? We talked about grit a lot. That want the same things. Everybody says they, oh, I want to start a business or I want to, you know, start making more money or I want to, have some meaningful production in my life, whether it's you know, something they produce or a product, um, or a blog or a podcast. But then when it comes down to like actually doing the thing, the execution is flawed and it turns out they weren't that committed in the first place. And I wish there was like this easy litmus test or some way you could identify all these people because there are people like that. They're out there. but it's hard to identify them. And he's definitely one of them.
That's all we've got, but we'll be talking to other people soon. And thanks to all
Yeah.
listeners. Thanks to my mom. She may
Yeah.
be the main listener, the only listener, but
We are so grateful for every one of our listeners, including
all
Sam's mom.
6 of them.
Yes.
Okay. All right, my
Yeah.
man. Well, we'll wrap up and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Take care.
Okay, brother. Thank you. Bye.